It was mentioned in the last video that the maximum number of uses for a static glyph corresponds to the number of cards for a dynamic glyph that you can add to a deck. Also, static glyph uses all add to a single cooldown timer, which adds heat to the glyph, while cards representing dynamic glyphs all have individualized cooldown timers. To get an idea of just how significant this difference is, I calculated the maximum number of times I could spam my stone arrow over a period of 1 minute for both the static and dynamic cases. Here I'm assuming that the dynamic glyphs are drawn into the deck immediately upon coming off cooldown. You can see that while initially dynamic and static uses are the same, the number of dynamic uses quickly breaks away. After a minute, the number of dynamic uses is more than 3 times the number of static uses. A plot of the focus cost over the same interval reveals that the focus cost for the dynamic glyphs is only about twice the focus cost of the static glyphs. The result? One can get more than 3 times the DPS from dynamic glyphs as one can get from static glyphs, with a little more than half the focus cost per glyph used. You can reduce the amount of focus consumed as a static glyph user by never accumulating heat. Just wait the full cooldown time for the glyph every time you use it. This will even out the focus cost between the dynamic and static glyphs, but your rate of fire will be exactly 1/5 the rate of fire for the dynamic glyphs. When you add multiple cards for the same glyph to your deck, it's possible that you will have more than one copy of the card in your hand. When this happens, you can combine these 2 cards to make a stack. Stacks of dynamic glyph cards are analogous to charging static glyphs. Each stack adds roughly 25% effectiveness and reduces the focus cost of the card. Despite the similarities, dynamically stacked cards have several differences from statically charged glyphs. If you fizzle a charged glyph, then you have to start charging all over. If you fizzle a dynamic stack, you retain the stack in your hand. If you are stunned, mezzed, etc. while charging a glyph, you have to start all over again. If you are stunned, mezzed, etc., not only do you retain your dynamic stacks, but you can continue to stack until you get out of the effect. Other times you can stack dynamic glyphs, but not charge static glyphs, include waiting on the global cooldown timer in between glyph uses, and charging up a free attack. The only thing your avatar can do while charging a static glyph is auto attack. A final unique property of dynamic glyphs has to do with deck swapping. When you go into combat with dynamic glyphs in your deck, your hand starts empty and you need to wait for your cards to draw. When you swap decks, you will retain any dynamic glyphs currently in your hand as long as they are allowed in the deck you swap to. While I have used the mouse to stack in this video, there's a much faster mechanic implemented for stacking. First, press and hold the hotkey for the slot of the card you wish to move. Then press the hotkey for the slot you wish to move the card to.